Greetings, dear students. It's Professor Gaffey, this time coming to you from my backyard. I have been waiting for a day where there hasn't been too much wind or any rain so that I could make an outside video. Now, with the outside video might come several disruptions. We'll just be patient with the birds and anything else that might come our way. So in this video, I would like to talk with you about the handout that corresponds with your third mini assignment for project number 3. This third mini assignment is called Outlining the SOAPS of Two Sources. There is a handout on our Canvas page that looks something like this. It is called Outlining the SOAPS of Two Sources for project number 3. You can locate this by going to our syllabus link on our Canvas homepage. Once you download this handout to your computer, you can then proceed along with this video. In this video, I talk with you a little bit about how to complete this video and how to complete this handout and how to use the handout to analyze your sources for your project to make sure that your sources are relevant and credible. So moving forward, as we're looking at this handout, you can see that it notes that in your last 2 brief mini assignments, you chose a topic, you chose a research question, you identified some key search terms, and you also found several sources that were hopefully relevant to project number 3. Some of your sources likely came from your search on Google Advanced, and some of your sources likely came from your searches in the library databases. Regardless of where they came from, I want you to pick your 2 favorite sources. Now, these sources might be the ones that are most relevant to your project. They might be the ones that maybe are just the most interesting to you. But at this point, we want to select 2 sources as we move forward with our next mini assignment for project number 3. Once you decide on those 2 sources, your first step, as noted on your handout, is to read your first source. Go ahead and take notes as you read your source. You might not be able to write in the margins as we have been doing in class, but you can take some notes in your notebook or on any piece of paper. You might even take some notes on the back of your handouts from class. Once you have read your first source, I want you to analyze and outline the SOAPS of the source. Now, you're already familiar with this acronym in part. You know that in your last 2 assignments, you outlined the speaker, the occasion, the audience, and the purpose in the introductions that you have been writing. Now, I want you to think about one more step, and that is SOAPS, SOAPS, and that last S stands for the source. So at this point, I'd like you to take a look at the first page of your handout, where I note the questions that you can ask yourself about the speaker. You've been doing this in part all along. But what do you know about the speaker of your source? And remember, the speaker and the author are the same person in this case. Why is this speaker credible? At this point, I don't want to just know who is the speaker, what is the speaker's name, but what about them makes them credible to talk about this topic? For you all, you might need to do a quick Google search for your author. The other thing you can do is it's very possible that on the newspaper website or magazine website, if you go right to your source, it's very likely that you'll be able to click on the author's name and it will take you to a brief biography of the author. So to find out information about your speaker or your author, you can do one of 2 things. You can either Google that person and find out information about your author, or you can click on their name on your online newspaper or magazine where you'll find some biographical information about that author. Then, once you read about that author, that speaker, what about their biography makes you trust them as a speaker? That is what you will want to write about right below the red section on your handout. So first I ask you questions about the speaker, then I want you to answer those questions about the speaker, either doing a Google search or by clicking on their name on your online newspaper or magazine. Once you have determined why the speaker is credible, I want you to move on to the purple section, which is O for occasion. Now remember, the occasion of our writing stems from the introduction that we read. So when you read your first source, those first several paragraphs likely outlined the occasion that inspired the speaker to write this article. Go ahead and on your handout, below the purple section, in your own words, explain what motivated this speaker to write this particular article. What was the occasion that prompted them to write this article? From there, you can move on to the green section, which is known as audience. Here, I want to know who is the intended audience for this particular article. Now, to determine that audience, you need to look at where the article was published. That is, in what newspaper or magazine. Based on your knowledge of the newspaper or magazine, you can then determine who the intended audience is. So for example, maybe you found an article that was published in the Washington Post. If you're not sure who reads the Washington Post, you can go ahead and Google Washington Post and find out who the typical reader of the Washington Post is. That will tell you a little bit about the intended audience of that particular newspaper. After you determine who the audience is based on who reads the newspaper or magazine that your article is published in, I would like you to write on your handout below the green portion. Who is the intended audience? What do these audience members value or care about, right? So you want to analyze those audience members to the best of your ability. From there, we can move on to the blue section, which is the purpose. You have read this article already, so now you can determine what is the purpose of this source. Is it to inform readers about something? Is it to explain to them, readers, what causes something? Is it to make an argument about something? Is it to propose a solution about something? But what is that general purpose? In addition to outlining the general purpose, I would like you to put in your own words some of the key claims that the speaker makes in this article. So, right below this blue section, I'd like you to put in your own words what is the purpose of the source, and in your own words, summarize some of the key claims or findings of the source. Once you complete that blue section, I would like you to move on to the final section, which is in yellow. And this one is called source. Now, we haven't worked with this one yet in class, so this will be your first time analyzing the source. But to analyze the source, you really need to know about the publication itself. So not the article, but you want to know some information about the newspaper or magazine. What do you know about this newspaper or magazine? Why is that source, that newspaper or magazine, credible? Does it have, for example, an editorial board that actually looks at all articles that are submitted? Now, here's the thing. Most newspapers and magazines do have editorial boards. Things just don't get published by submitting them. People who sit on an editorial board read them, they discuss those articles, they make determinations about what they will and will not publish. Sometimes they will go back to the author and say, hey, you have to adjust these things before we publish the source. So, what I'd like you to do is, based on the title of your magazine or newspaper, maybe go to that newspaper or magazine's website and do a quick search to see if you can find if there is an editorial board that serves that newspaper or magazine. From there, you will know that the source at least has some credibility, because that means that there is some oversight in what gets published. So, after you analyze the source, determine that there is some credibility because there is this editorial board that vets the articles that before they get printed. Once you have done that, you have actually analyzed the SOAPS of your source. You have discussed why the speaker is credible. You've outlined the occasion that prompted the speaker to write the article. You've explained a little bit about the audience, what that audience cares about and values. You've identified the purpose of the source and the key claims that are made in the source. And you've determined some information about the source and why it's a credible or reliable or fair source for us to read. Once you determine that for your first source, I'd like you to move to the second page of your handout, where you will now read your second source and outline the SOAPs of your second source. If you have any questions as you complete this SOAPS worksheet, of course you can email me, call me, or text me. But just know that this is very similar to the blue SOAPS handouts that you have completed in class already. It's just now I'm asking you to type them up in sort of this color-coordinated fashion. The color coordination is here, and it's meant to help you for when you draft your actual source analysis essay. The good news is that now that you have completed your brainstorming for Project 3, you've completed your research for Project number 3, and you've completed your SOAPS analysis for 2 sources for Project number 3, you're actually almost done with the draft for the project itself, which I will discuss more in the next email. So at this point, we are done analyzing the SOAPs of our sources. If you have any questions, please reach out, but otherwise, have a great day. Bye.